This is your Friday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope everyone's having a great day, getting set for what should be a fun weekend. Got a good show coming up for you before we get to all the weekend good times. Alex Goligoski, newest member of the Minnesota Wild, or at least one of them, for a team that's been very busy in free agency early on. He will join the show in just a little bit to talk about returning home to play and all sorts of other stuff for the 36-year-old. It's his birthday today, to talk about that. So good stuff with Alex. Looking forward to sharing that conversation with you. Also get into some Major League Baseball trade deadline stuff. I'm going to tread lightly on that because some of that will be obsolete by 3 p.m. Friday when the deadline hits. But plenty of stuff to think about right there, including Jose Barrios. Not going to spend all show on that this time because we spent a lot of time on that already this week. But, plenty to talk about with that, who might be going out and why. But first, what did I miss? The big story on Thursday was the NBA draft, in which the Timberwolves did not participate, but they did make a somewhat significant trade. If we're going to call the trade to get Ricky Rubio back last season significant, we have to call the trade that sent him back out once again also significant. The Wolves sent Rubio to Cleveland for Taurean Prince, who can play a little 3, can play a little 4. The Wolves add a little size there. They get a 2022 second-round pick from Cleveland, which could be a fairly decent high second-round pick if Cleveland continues its rebuild. And they also get some cap space, some cash. They get about $5 million in cap space or so, which could help them a little bit as they try to fill out the rest of their roster with some rotation players going forward. So first blush at this deal, hardly a blockbuster. If you were hoping, that Ricky Rubio would be included, he's got an expiring salary, and so does Prince. Let's make that clear. Both of them in the final year of their deals, but Rubio cap hit, closer to the $17, $18 million figure, and Prince more like 13. So the Wolves, shed a little bit of salary there, lose a little bit of maybe salary flexibility in a trade, but do gain some cap space in that. So the first blush is that if you're hoping that it was a blockbuster with Rubio, that they were going to use that expiring to make a big move, that didn't happen. He's not like part of some Ben Simmons trade or any other big deal that might have netted a more frontline, starting caliber power forward, something like that. But I don't hate the trade. A lot of people on Twitter don't like the trade at all, and I get it. If you're a big Rubio fan, if you think he's maybe due for a bounce back season, or you just like him in general, like what he brings to the table, I get it. I don't like to see Ricky Rubio go necessarily. When he came in a decade ago, it was one of the greatest things in Timberwolves history, but he really struggled last year, you guys. He was not a good player, particularly in the first half of the season. Got better as the year went on, and maybe some of that is just, the shock of being traded in the middle of a pandemic, playing, at least the start of the year and under very, very strange circumstances, the year kind of thrown together. So, maybe Ricky Rubio was suffering through a lot of the other stuff that, many other players and, all of us, frankly, were suffering through, which was, it's hard to do your job when you've got your mind occupied by so many other things. That said, even if we give him some grace for last season, I just don't see how he was going to be much of a roster fit here, aside from, being a mentor, a high-priced one at that for some of the Wolves' younger players. And Anthony Edwards, has lauded him several times for his leadership, other things that he does on the court. But aside from that, he wasn't really going to offer them much, and it was kind of an awkward roster fit. And I'm less worried about the Anthony Edwards mentorship than a lot of you guys are too. And actually, here was Gerson Rosas, too, addressing that. He couldn't talk about the trade specifically because it's not finalized, but he did address the media after all the draft stuff concluded late Thursday night. Here's what he had to say about Anthony Edwards and kind of, the concern about whether or not he's going to have enough leadership and mentorship around him.
Ant, number one, is his own guy, and his talent is pretty special. There's been a number of individuals who have really helped and supported him this year. But at the same time, we all know the only constant in our business is change, maturation, growth, and development. And we've got a great support system in place here for not only Ant, but Kat, all our top players, whether that's on the court or off the court, whether that's the roster. But unfortunately, in all of our business, change is is a reality.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I fall on it too. Edwards probably definitely needs good mentors and good leaders around him, but Ricky Rubio wasn't going to be here forever. He was on an expiring contract that's expensive. He was never a great roster fit to begin with. He was probably going to get traded at some point in this offseason no matter what. Now, if your quibble is this wasn't the best deal they possibly could have gotten, yeah, maybe. I'll leave that up to Gerson Rosas and the talent evaluators with the Timberwolves. They know the market. They know what's out there. Maybe they were getting kind of closer, taking a look at this offseason and thinking, this is maybe the best we're going to do if we want to try to upgrade this roster. Taurean Prince brings them some three-point shooting. He's a pretty good three-point shooter, especially in the last 3, 4, 5 years. Younger player, little less salary. Plus, you get a second-round pick. You get some cap space. So on balance, I think it does make some sense. And Rubio just wasn't a great roster fit. You already have D'Angelo Russell on this roster, and trying to figure out a way to get Russell, if he's healthy again, and that was a big thing last year. Rubio probably ended up playing more last year because of Russell's injury. You have Malik Beasley, you have Anthony Edwards, who has emerged, and then you have Rubio. There's a lot of small, 1-2. You can't really play. Edwards can maybe play a little bit of small forward because he's got more bulk, but it's a lot of minutes to try to divvy up. And I know injuries happen throughout the year, but just the idea of trying to play Russell and Rubio together, it was a disaster at the start of the year. It got better, as the year went on, when Russell came back towards the end of the season, but I'm trying not to put too much stock in everything that happened towards the end of the year. A lot of teams are kind of just trying to get to the finish line. The Wolves are, we're certainly trying to win more than a lot of the other teams in their kind of tax bracket of victories and such. So I like the way they played towards the end of that year. I'm just saying I don't want to put too much stock in that, and I just think overall Rubio is a poor roster fit, especially at that price. You can do more with that money than you could with Ricky Rubio, and he's probably going to get traded anyway. So second go around for Ricky Rubio is rather unceremonious. Fans got to see him a little bit towards the end of the season when they started adding back some spectators at Target Center, but hardly the second coming that you would have wanted from him. Got off to that really poor start, looked completely lost on the court. Let's be honest, he was borderline unplayable at parts of the first half of last season. Certainly got better as the year went on, and is having some good nights in international play since then. So he could certainly be due for a bounce back season. That said, it was probably not going to be for more than 40, 50, 60 games at the most with the Wolves this year because, as that expiring contract, his value is in a trade, not on the court. They probably almost certainly weren't going to re-sign him. That just doesn't work with everything else they've got on their salary cap book. So if this was the best trade they could get at the time and they could add a little bit of shooting and some cap space, I am for it. Perhaps the most amusing thing to watch on Thursday night during the draft was Wolves fans who are so used to the draft being this event, and the Wolves went into the night without a pick. It was the first time, I think, since 2012 that they didn't have a first-round pick, at least. And it's just the second time since 2004 they didn't have a first-round pick. They also didn't have a second. Both of those picks shipped to Golden State as part of the D'Angelo Russell Andrew Wiggins trade. The Wolves fans were staying up late. I was still on Twitter, around 11:15. Wolves fans are they going to trade back into the late second round and get some late round sleeper? And that just didn't happen. They must not have found a deal that they wanted that could get them into one of those rounds. And here's Gerson Rosas addressing kind of how the night went.
We're one of the youngest rosters in the NBA, and when you want to take a step forward in terms of winning, you need a couple of things. One is experience, two is continuity, and third is really the growth and development in the system. And for us, as we looked at the roster and as we looked at the draft, there were a couple of points in the draft where we felt like there were good opportunities to address upgrades or opportunities to grow our talent a little bit. Unfortunately, they didn't work out, but overall, our focus has been more trade and free agency focus in terms of addressing some of those needs.
And that's fine. They did add McKinley Wright, former Minnesota high school standout. They signed him to a free agent undrafted contract. So maybe bring him into the mix. They've had some great success with contracts like that in the past, guys like Naz Reid, Jordan McLaughlin, guys who have, not necessarily frontline starters, but guys who have certainly played rotation minutes. And Naz Reid looks like a very, very promising piece of the future, even though he went undrafted. So we'll see how that pans out. The big things to watch beyond that, Jonathan Kuminga goes number 7 to Golden State. That was the pick the Wolves would have had they, not traded that pick away. We'll be watching his development. I'm not sure if it'll be in Golden State ultimately or not. That doesn't, an 18-year-old project player doesn't necessarily seem to fit the timeline that the guys like Steph Curry are on, but we'll see if he's a long-term fit there or somewhere else. But regardless, that is a player to watch going forward. Also, Jalen Suggs, you're going to watch his career, former Minnesota standout, former Gonzaga, played at Minnehaha Academy, saw him play in high school a few times because that school is not too far from where I live. Goes number 5 to Orlando. Maybe slid a little bit more than I thought he would, but when you go number 5, that's not really a slide. That's just maybe 1 or 2 spots later than I thought he would. Great for Jalen Suggs, and so we'll be watching his career as well. But yeah, Wolves fans, just there wasn't much to watch. There was just a lot of wondering and waiting, seeing if they were going to make any moves, seeing if anything else was going to happen besides the Rubio deal. I guess that gave them enough to chew on. I hardly think they are done this offseason. I think there's plenty more to come, but free agency starting next week, then maybe that'll spur some more action in free agency and on the trade market. But I'm not sure if there's going to be this blockbuster this summer or not. It might be a tough go. They might be more inclined to add pieces on the periphery in the rotation, try to bolster the edges instead of the middle. We'll have to see how that goes. I'll probably talk to Chris Hine later next week once we get into free agency to see what he thinks about their roster building as well. But yeah, for Wolves fans, it was a strange, quiet night after you're so used to being in the perennial lottery process. So ultimately, though, sometimes it's not a bad idea to not make a major move if one is not there to be made. And bottom line, too, is I don't hate the Rubio trade nearly as much as a lot of you. In fact, I kind of like it.
I'm Chris Hine, Timberwolves beat writer at the Star Tribune and the first 5-time guest in daily delivery history. Thank you for listening to this podcast. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast, our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, and even all of Rand's future blog posts about how the Timberwolves should trade for players they will never get, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Happy to be joined on Daily Delivery today by one of the newest members of the Wild. It's been busy for Minnesota early on in free agency, but perhaps the most well-known name of those coming to Minnesota in free agency, Alex Goligoski. You've been played in Grand Rapids in high school, played for the Gophers, and now coming home. I believe we're recording this on a Thursday, but I believe when this episode airs on Friday will be your 36th birthday. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. I got a big birthday coming up, so it's been a good week.
It has been a good week. I remember you from high school, so the fact that you're turning 36 tomorrow doesn't make a 44-year-old host of the show feel any younger, Alex, but congrats on signing with the Wild. And maybe right off the jump, tell me what brings you home at this late stage of your career? What was enticing about playing for the Wild?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's a great fit for me. I wanted to play on a good team, and just from playing them last year, they're a really good team. They're hard to play against. They play an aggressive, fast style, and that's how I want to play the game, and that's how I think the game should be played. So I think the fit is the number one thing, and then obviously, I'm coming home too, so it's the best of every world, I guess. A lot of it made sense.
Some athletes don't necessarily want that piece of it, or they maybe shy away from the spotlight of playing at home. I mean, you already had it with playing for the Gophers, but how do you anticipate that piece of it? It's been a while since you've been here. That said, people still know your name, and they identify you as a Minnesota homegrown hockey player.
Yeah, I don't think I really ever had the desire to to come back and play here. You're playing for other teams and you get invested in those cities and those teams. And, I think at this stage of my career, it was, I'd never been to free agency also, which, I mean, you can't really pick your team. So, I got to free agency at this point, and here comes the dog. Got to free agency, and like I said, the fit was great, and there is a different beast to it coming back to your hometown. There's a lot of people and family, obviously, so you got to kind of have some conversations where it's still my job. My family, we're still living our lives. It's not just a free for all, so that'll be a part of it, but there's so many positives to it. Those connections with family and friends that I've missed out on, hopefully rekindle a bunch of those and see people that we don't get to see that much. So that part of it should be good.
How excited are the people, in your life that, maybe like you said, didn't get to see as much when don't get to pick your team and you're in, Pittsburgh, Dallas, all over the map kind of, but not very close to here. How excited is everybody that, that maybe still lives or is close to Minnesota?
Yeah, I think everyone's really excited. It's a good feeling for me that people are excited that I'm coming back, and they'll have a chance to see me a little bit more. My family will have a chance to see them a little bit more, and you got to be careful. You got to walk that line a little bit where it is it's still my job. It's still it's not just going to be seeing people all the time and doing that, but it'll be fun to be closer to people for sure.
You just referenced the dog. What kind of dog? And is the dog excited for the move too?
Yeah, he's fired up. This is Jax. He's a soft-coated Wheaten Terrier. I don't know if you can see him.
Yeah, I can see him. Yeah.
Yeah, he's about 8 months old, so very much a puppy.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Yeah. He's great though.
That's got to be fun. You're gonna move him a ways, huh?
Yeah. We don't have to do too much with him, so he's the least of our worries.
That's good. You mentioned the Wild and just kind of the style of play, and you referenced, playing against them last season, as you maybe can expand on that a little bit as you kind of watch them from afar. Who on this roster did you say, oh, man, I want to play with that guy, or man, he's really good, or, what do you, as you evaluate the strengths of this team, what do you see?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the guys I've played against for a long time, Spurgeon, Brodeen, Dumba, those guys, I probably played against those guys for the last, however long they've been in the league, 7-8 years. So, I mean, I've always liked all three of those guys a lot. They're great players, really smart, great skaters, great puck movers. So, for the defense, definitely those guys stick out. And then, up front, they look a lot different than years past, just, with Fiala, Kaprizov, Greenway, Eriksson Ek took a big step last year. Foligno was really good for him. Hartman, that just a lot of guys, a lot of new guys, and it kind of bring a little bit of a different swagger. And I think it kind of trickled throughout the lineup that, they were really, really just played an aggressive style last year that you didn't really see out of, the Wild teams of the past. So it was, it was hard. We had a tough time with it for sure. So yeah. I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
You mentioned Kaprizov. That's the guy that, everybody here got excited about last year, and for good reason. You saw him 7-8 times last year, I suppose. A lot of things stand out when a player is that good, but as far as a difference maker goes, do you kind of point to him and say that was the main difference, or is it stylistic, or how hard was he specifically to play against?
Yeah, he's very hard to play against. Really dynamic offensive player. He can kind of do it all. He's really strong and very creative. So I think, just from playing against him, I think him and Zuccarello really creatively play the game a lot different than a lot of guys do in the NHL. So, they were specifically against that line. You had to play a little more horizontal game, and defend them a little bit differently. But yeah, like I said, I think it really trickled down through their lineup. They had a lot of guys that played with a lot of confidence, and they played really hard. And it's going to be a fun team to be a part of, for sure.
I'm interested in that Zuccarello Kaprizov piece that you were just talking about. What is it that they do differently? So, I mean, some of it I see, but it's probably different for someone who lives the game and is experiencing it on the ice.
Yeah, I think in the NHL you see a lot of kind of north-south hockey. It's it's fast and get the puck through the zones quick and get it into the other zone, play in the offensive zone. But with guys like that, they'll play east-west a little bit more. They'll slow the game down and use the whole width of the rink more than other guys will. So creates a different challenge. You really got to keep your gap on them and try to limit their time and space that way, because that's how they get it, by pulling up and hitting that second wave of defense or whatever it may be. And they're both such good passers, and they can find guys in small holes. So you got to be tight on them.
You referenced coming home, but that said, the process of free agency, you can pick anywhere. Did you get a sense early on? We were hearing your name a fair amount, at least on this end. Did you get a sense from the Wild that there was a lot of interest on their end pretty quick in this process?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you get, it's all kind of through your agent, and you don't really know what's going on, but you kind of hear that certain teams are interested, and to be honest, the media probably hears just as much as we do. So, yeah, I think from the beginning, we kind of knew they were going to be an option for sure.
Do you like to hear stuff like that, or do you just want to kind of like wait until the end and just say, agent, tell me what the best offer is. Let's sort through this. And then we'll make a decision.
Yeah, I was more like that. It was like 3 days of my agent calling, multiple times a day. And I was like, okay, this is enough. Let's slow down and let's just get to the day and go from there.
Now, early in your career, you were part of Pittsburgh team that won a cup in 2009, correct? And you had a little piece of the playoffs that year. And since then, it's been I think you've played 40 plus playoff games. When you get to a veteran stage of your career, how much does winning matter? Fit is certainly a thing, but I got to imagine winning carries a certain amount of weight. If there's a team that you think has a chance to win, that's got to carry some weight as well, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, going into free agency, there was, we could probably cross off half the teams that I really didn't have any interest in. So it was all basically all the teams I thought were going to be good that I wanted to go to. So, yeah, I mean, I picked a good one, so I'm excited.
Last thing for you. This is a team that, like we said, they went to, made it to the first round of the playoffs. It was a weird year last year. I don't have to tell you that, just playing everything in the division and, 56 games. This is a, full 82 game slate as far as we know right now, and kind of back to the regular schedule. How far can this team go? What do you see as the potential of, a team that took a big step last year and wants to do more this year?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a team that can do it all. I mean, I think we're rock solid straight through our lineup. I think, you mentioned last year, that division was very top heavy. And I think you're going to look this year and those top teams, Vegas, Colorado, Minnesota, St. Louis. I mean, the division just gets harder. You add Winnipeg and Dallas, and I think it's going to make all these teams better. And I think the rest of the league is going to kind of realize that these teams are really good. So I think it's exciting. It's really exciting for me. I'm really excited to play on this team.
You playing in the Beauty League, right? How's that been going?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was playing the Beauty League. It's going good. We had a big win last night. So we're 2-1 now. Got a couple wins in a row. We're feeling good about ourselves.
All right. Awesome, Alex. Appreciate your time, and good luck next season. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Enjoyed that conversation with Alex Goligoski. And we should mention the Wild has been very active early on in free agency, trying to fill up those defensive holes left by the departures of Carson Soucy and Ryan Suter. Soucy lost, of course, in the expansion draft, and Suter bought out. I'll get a little bit more to that in a moment here, but basically had 3 holes to plug on defense. Goligoski figures to slide into one of those top 2 pairs, maybe alongside Jared Spurgeon. He's the most notable of the 3 they've signed, but they also signed Dmitry Kulikov Wednesday and then John Merrill, a veteran, on Thursday. So, those deals, while maybe not blockbusters, definitely bolster the defense, give them some depth, some options, probably look at a little bit of, other guys in that mix, some younger guys like Kalen Addison. We'll see, who ends up being the top 6 and what how they adjust for whatever happens with injuries along the way. But certainly they have to be feeling a little bit better about their core than they did going into free agency, where it looked like they were going to be pretty thin on that spot. And speaking of which, Ryan Suter spoke to the media for the first time that I can tell on Thursday, talking about what it felt like to get released, what it felt like to get bought out. And he's basically, I couldn't believe it. He was basically in shock, hadn't heard anything about the sort until it happened. He said, he thinks he can play, he's got a 4-year deal from Dallas. He thinks he can even play beyond that. We'll see. This was, the move on him was more of a matter of timing than anything, I imagine, because he can certainly still play. He was playing at a reasonably high level last season. So that is going to be one to watch as the years go on. Did the Wild make the right move in that moment? And you got to evaluate it beyond just Suter's play. You got to evaluate it with who else they're able to sign, how things work out long term with eventually with Kirill Kaprizov and Kevin Fiala, and what they need to do with those guys. But bottom line is, Suter out, 3 new defensemen in, and it'll be a much different looking blue line for the Wild next season. Let's finish with the cooler. Depending on when you listen to this, Jose Barrios may or may not still be on the Twins. 3 p.m. trade deadline today. Barrios' name really heating up in trade talks, according to reporting from our Phil Miller. You saw a Max Scherzer deal happen Thursday that could kind of clear the way. Barrios certainly being the best possible available starting pitcher left on the trade market. A lot of teams interested, according to Phil Miller's reporting and MLB.com reporting. The Blue Jays, the Rays, several National League West teams in the mix as well. The Red Sox, the Mariners, a lot of teams trying to get Jose Barrios and wanting him in this mix for the Twins. And that could create a pretty good market. Sounds like, a lot of these teams too, as Phil Miller noted. A nice thing about this is a lot of the teams that are interested in Barrios have pretty deep farm systems. Teams like the Blue Jays, the Padres, the Mariners, they have loaded, prospect pools that could give the Twins the 2 to 3, high level, I would think, at least mid-level, high level, a couple of them at least. You got to get at least a couple top 5 guys from the system, guys that are, not, sitting at single A either. Hopefully guys that are double A, triple A in this deal to account for the value of Jose Barrios. But I think he's going to get traded. I think he should get traded. We've talked about that plenty on the show this week. I think Michael Pineda could get dealt today. Be interested to see what happens with Taylor Rogers as the deadline gets closer. The relief pitcher market could heat up, although he's on the injured list right now. Should be back relatively soon there. Maybe Andrelton Simmons, guys we've talked about along the way, the guys that are on 1-year deals. I don't know if the Josh Donaldson market is cooling off with a lot of teams already adding some offense like the Yankees and Red Sox, but we will see. The big one, though, the big domino that could fall is Jose Barrios. I expect it to happen, and maybe it has already happened by now, depending on when you listen to this. I think it's the final analysis is kind of what I mentioned on Thursday's show. I just don't think the Twins are good enough to get this thing going again in 2022 to the point where you would want to carry him into next season and just roll the dice that he can be, one of your top 3 starters on a really good team. I think you're trying to kind of reload for 2023, and if you're having a hard time in negotiations with Jose Barrios right now, I don't think it's going to get any easier if he's allowed to get all the way to free agency after next season. So this is the time when his value is high. This is the time where his value kind of meets where you are as an organization, and I think it's time to make a deal. That'll do it for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed everything. It's a possibility we'll do a special edition here later if the Twins trade deadline becomes particularly interesting. Hope you guys enjoyed Thursday's shows. We did a special edition on Suni Lee after she won the gold medal in addition to the regular show. If not, though, we'll be back at it Monday. Plenty to talk about this week and next week. So thanks for joining me on Daily Delivery. As always, please download this podcast, write a review, do all the stuff that helps the podcast. Read Star Tribune, startribune.com, and we'll catch you again on Monday.